Dean.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm not your
Yeah.
actually slightly nerdy but brilliant son, but it's a great joy to sit in the
No.
co-pilot seat.
Well, Alex has got the day off, as you know, and you were kind enough to fill in for him,
Oh, I
which
was
is
delighted
awesome.
to be invited.
Yeah. I won't even miss him. Not for a day, anyhow. So we've got what? Ron Meyer and Mark Reeder on tonight
We sure do.
from the Bigfoot Alien Connection film and book.
Mm-hmm.
And then before that, we're going to have Tate Hieronymus on to talk about a new doc that he did on Bluff Creek.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to all of them. They all seem just so interesting. All their
Yeah,
work's
it should
great.
be.
So what a fun show it's going to be tonight.
It should be. It should be. I would say should, barring any, blackouts or power outages or God knows.
Well, I am in the north woods.
It's funny because already the live fun begins. Already my notes want me to log in right in the middle of reading them. It's perfect timing. So now I gotta log into my notes if I can even remember my password.
That's
hilarious
for you. Yeah.
It's like, when you do live radio, everything will go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It can't go wrong.
It's like the Murphy's Law, and it always does apply to live streams, that's for sure.
Yeah. So are you are you getting ready for Halloween or doing anything there?
Yeah, we had, in fact, I have two little Halloween stories. One is I took my daughter dressed as a black cat to a fun little Halloween event at a nearby zoo the other day. So she had a great time.
Cool.
But there's a related Halloween story. We have a pumpkin patch, and this involves you. That's why I have to tell you this story. We have a pumpkin patch here. We started it a couple of years ago, and we do it every year because of, Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin or whatever the cartoon is. Chloe, my daughter, loves it so
we
much.
all grew up on that. Yep.
Anyway, we had a pumpkin patch, and she's at that age, as you know, when kids have one kind of foot in the imaginary world and one foot in the real world. So she interacts with dragons and all kinds of creatures, but she normally doesn't. She normally doesn't force the fact that they're real. Anyway, we were outside doing chores a little earlier in the fall, and all of a sudden she's like, I just saw something black run into the pumpkin patch. And I'm like, was it a squirrel? No, it was weird. It was black. I don't know what it is. Anyway, a day or two later, I go out to let my cat out of my garage where he sleeps, and he normally runs straight over. And I call him. His name's Valet. I named him after the famous French ufologist Jacques Valet. And all of a sudden I see him behind my F-250. In fact, first I see this little black shape dart down the stairs to the basement where it ends at a doorway. You can't go straight in. This little black shape, and sure enough, my cat is like 3 feet or 4 feet behind this black shape. And I'm like, what on earth was that? Anyway, I go over, look down, nothing there except my cat. My cat's looking around bewildered and follows me out of the garage. Anyway, I told Chloe the story, forgetting she'd seen something weird and black. I'm like, Valet was chasing some weird little black creature the other day.
So what was it?
And she said, well, I don't know. And you know what she said, though? She said, you have to ask Lyle Blackburn or Ken Gerhardt or Doug Heidscheck because they'll know what it was.
Probably was some kind of maybe a pine marten or a mink.
Yeah, I don't know.
How big was it?
Though. I couldn't. I mean, my staircase in my garage, it dead ends at the bottom. There's a door to the basement, and the cat went down. I went over, and it was just the cat. But he was chasing something, like the way he'd chase a squirrel or something. But there was nothing there.
Well, okay, so it's kind of a point we could make. Chloe was a good eyewitness.
Yeah, she had seen something.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
How's your Halloween shaping up so far?
I'm pretty much on ignore Halloween, other than, there's a few creepy movies on. And I watched this really creepy movie. I thought it was really good because it was tasteful, it's not over the top, good storytelling. And do you think I can remember the name? It's called, I'm not good with movie names, Mr. Harriman's Cell Phone.
Huh.
It's a Stephen King movie.
Okay.
Have you heard of it?
No, I won't lie to you. I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, it's on Netflix. It's brand new. It's just produced. It's got Donald Sutherland in it.
Oh, he's excellent.
He's one actor in it. No, it's really good because it's just good, tasteful, spooky storytelling.
Sounds great.
It's no blood.
Spooky season.
Yeah, there's no blood in it. Anyhow, and speaking of pumpkins, Minnesota grew the world's largest pumpkin, 2,560 pounds in my county.
Good grief. Did you go and see it or?
No. Actually, they hauled it to California.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? That probably wasn't easy to do. And it was apparently a horticulture teacher from Minnesota set a new U.S. record Monday for the heaviest pumpkin after raising the giant gourd weighing 2,560 pounds. I'm like, oh my God. So, so he won, and it came from Anoka County. Right here.
Charlie Brown would say, good grief. That's one big pumpkin.
Yeah. And usually, when you get these big giant pumpkins, they're quite distorted. Mm-hmm. They're not like round. Mm-hmm. They're all this like kind of blob-like, I guess. Yeah. So that was my movie pick of the year. Okay. And if I had my taste to watch any movie this Halloween, I was so happy I watched it. I was just totally in love with the movie. And yet I looked up the critics. Critics didn't like it. They gave it like 35 on Rotten Tomatoes, and wasn't a big critic hit. But then I read their criticisms, and I'm like, what in the heck are you talking about?
Yeah, some of the critics are off a little bit, I think.
It's terrible. Talk about nitpicking. It's like, they used the wrong kind of cell phone in the movie. It's like, that's...
What on earth?
So, and obviously you're really into films. Mm-hmm. So what is Dean's favorite Halloween movie?
Every year, I try to watch a couple, obviously. I can watch less now. I have a 6-year-old because obviously I'm going to put anything too terrifying on for her. But every year, and it's been my tradition for decades now, my go-to movie at Halloween is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which is the only of the Halloween series which isn't a Michael Myers movie. In fact, when it came out, it was a massive flop because after John Carpenter's Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, audience members expected to see Michael Myers in his famous white mask and his, butcher knife slashing up teenagers. But the film totally has nothing to do with the original franchise. And instead, I'm not sure if you've seen it or not. But
no, I have not.
It's about the older type of Gaelic pagan Halloween traditions and them being imported to America by this conspiracy which intends to play the ultimate trick on the children. Gotcha. And it plays in some ways like an invasion of the body snatchers, and in some ways like H.P. Lovecraft's famous book Shadow over Innsmouth. It's just a wonderful movie, and it's such a product of its time. So it's like revisiting 1982 every time you watch it. Yeah, I love that.
I will check it out.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Did you hear about the successful diversion of a comet?
No, I didn't hear about it. I didn't hear about it.
Oh, they actually did it. Yeah. Apparently, it was even more successful than they had hoped. So it says NASA. It was called NASA's DART. Good name for a spacecraft that's going to divert an asteroid.
Indeed.
So it says the next time an asteroid threatens Earth, humanity might have a chance at saving the planet. On Tuesday, NASA announced that its experimental double asteroid redirection test successfully altered the orbit. And then I'm not even going to try to, give you the name of this asteroid. It's called like Dimorphos. Following 2 weeks of data collection and analysis, the agency found that DART's impact shortened the asteroid's orbit around its parent, but it went farther off course than they had hoped. So it worked.
It's like a Bruce Willis movie or something. Weren't there a few of those in the 90s, like where they had to divert the killer asteroids?
Yep. But I just thought, I always wondered, why don't they spend money on things like that? Versus even, in other words, get that dialed in first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Take your priorities, get that dialed in first, and then go fart around the universe.
Yeah.
Because it isn't going to do much good to go explore Jupiter if we're all wiped off.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Every day we wake up, Dean, we're lucky.
I know. And so it's another thing I always wonder why money isn't spent on more, and that's strengthening the grid. Like if you've ever read anything about coronal mass ejections or, EMPs, it's like, wow, they need to have something in place in case something like that hits us.
Well, between the man-made types and the natural types,
Mhm.
we could lose every car in the world, or in half the world, half the hemisphere. Every car could be burned out. Every wire could be fried. And wasn't there a thing that happened? Was it like 1914, or the
Yeah,
telegraph wires?
the
Of course,
Carring
back then we didn't have, cars, and
the
they weren't
Carrington
common.
event, I think that's called, right?
Yeah,
The Carrington event.
yeah. But even the telegraph wires burnt,
Gosh.
so it could happen.
And imagine what would happen to like microchips today if these big
Oh,
wires got cooked out back
oh
then.
my
These
God.
tiny little circuits as opposed to these big thick
Yeah.
cables.
Yep. Yeah, and they have these micro circuits and chips have no heat protection. There's none.
Gosh.
Like, I build a lot of like electrical controllers, and we have MOSFETs on them. They're soldered in to absorb the heat away from the circuit, from the chips. But most devices don't have those protections. And I do wonder whether one of my controllers would survive a big EMP. I don't know. I don't even know.
Jeez.
But certainly our computers and our cars are not. So we're going to be like that. No cars, no motorcycles, except maybe if you have an old car, might work.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard that.
I actually own a car that cranks.
Do you really? What?
Yeah, I've got a car that actually, it's this little British car. It's a TR3A. It's a beautiful little car. It's all restored, but it's got a crank I can put in front and crank it.
What year vintage is that about?
Well, 61.
Okay.
Do you remember the TR3s?
I'm not sure, to be honest, what that looks like. I'll have a look after the show. I'll Google it and look at it.
Yeah, TR3, they're pretty cool. So anyhow, but so I always think, I wonder if that's what I'll be driving.
At least you'll have
Big
something.
EMP. Yeah.
You'll be the only one on the road.
Yeah. And it's just funny because I still can't picture. I've never tried it, but it's got the little hole in the grill, and you stick the crank in, and you probably break your wrist trying to start it, but whatever.
I used to have a motorcycle in college, and it was like I bought it for a couple $100, and the button start, the electric start didn't work. So I always had to use the terrible Kickstarter on it. And it was so bad, if I could park the thing on a hill, I would, so I could clutch start. So I can only imagine cranking an actual car engine as opposed to kickstarting a bike.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I'll have to try it someday.
Yeah. Give it a go.
I'll have to get one of my friends over. There's no way I'm not that stupid. I'll end up with a cast on my wrist. If you don't get that thing dialed in just right, to get the points and the compression lined up, it'll kick back.
Oh gosh.
Just like the old motorcycles did. Do you remember the old motorcycles had what they call a spark retard lever? Like the old Indians, you could retard the spark so you could start the motorcycle easier.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But a lot of people would break their ankles, in those big, huge 1,000 cc kickstart, bikes.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I bet.
Yeah, and then last thing in the news, then we're gonna get Tate on, was I read an article that kind of just like, I still don't get it. It says first in the world proposal to fight climate change on farm animals. So they're planning on just taxing farm animals. So that's going to fight climate change. Just get more money. And it's just really, it gets me because just by charging everybody more taxes, that's not going
it's not going to turn down the temperature. They'll be taxing breathing soon, because they'll say, well, you're emitting carbon.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they're going to charge extra if you go. They're going to charge you a methane tax when you go to Taco John. But I always tell people I'm glad there's climate change, because my office literally 100,000 years ago, or even sooner, was under 400 feet of ice.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
I look at it that way.
I homeschool my daughter, and we go to a homeschool group once a week, and they do a science experiment there. And one they did 2 weeks ago, which brought to mind the whole, temperatures rising and, global warming and everything, is they did a test with thermometers to see, is the thermometer on a sunny day, obviously because they're only little kids, is it hotter in the sun, is it hotter in the shade, is it hotter on the grass, or is it hotter on the pavement? And the hottest of all was on the pavement. So a lot of these temperatures, which have been measured for 100 years, and now the thermometers around the world are now in urban areas that weren't concrete jungles
Of
50
course,
years
but
ago or 100 years ago. So,
you never hear them bring up concrete.
yeah.
You never hear them bring up asphalt,
Mhm.
footprints of homes, even solar panels. You would think. Have you ever touched a solar panel that's been in the sun? Oh my God, because they have a black surface
Right.
underneath that glass.
Right.
They get so hot. Things like even the buffalo disappearing from the prairies is attributed to climate change, no doubt, because they don't pack, they don't keep the permafrost in because they're gone. They need to compress the land and keep the permafrost in.
I see.
And now, since we don't have buffalo roaming North Dakota and all the prairies in Ontario and Manitoba, and they say that's been a big attributor. But the point is, you're not stopping it by taxing some cows.
Yeah.
All you're doing is raising the prices.
Mm-hmm.
Just what we need right now.
Yeah, exactly. In
Yeah.
today's climate, the last thing we need is to be forking out more money.
Yeah,
I do that every time I go to the grocery store. I mean, fork out more money. It seems like every time I go, the product I bought last week is another. It's gone up again and again and again.
I don't like to get too political, but that's one thing that really gets me. It's like, take advantage of people that, in the name of climate change. It says always in the name. You're using something that you're not going to slow it down if it's happening. No doubt the climate's been changing on Earth since it was, since it was a piece of dust.
Mm-hmm.
It's been changing. It's never going to stop changing. Long after we're gone, it's going to keep changing. So to use that as an excuse to charge an extra quarter for some eggs, it's like,
I know. It's
not helping. All right. Enough of that crap. Let's talk Bigfoot. Because I guess it's Bigfoot all night. Let's get Tate Hieronymus on and talk about Bluff Creek.
Okay, let's add him.
There he is.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Sure can.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So, where are you located, Tate? Where do you live?
Currently, I am in Coconut Creek, which is just outside of Miami, about 45 minutes. So
what in the heck were you doing in Bluff Creek?
I go there every year. I'm a member of the Bluff Creek Project, so that's kind of what I do.
Wouldn't it be better if you moved to Washington, California, somewhere where you're a little closer?
I've had people tell me that you're like, you should move over there, but I really want to live in the Midwest. That's my home. I'm from Kansas City.
Oh, cool.
So I would want to be centrally located. So if I wanted to go east or west, I could, or north and south. So
very cool. Well, Dean, I don't know. I would imagine you've got scenes from his latest expedition.
I sure
documentary.
Do.
Do you want to do that first, Tate, and then people understand what you're all about?
Okay,
let's do it.
Makes more sense.
Let's play that right now.
Done.
Hey Tate, this is Damon. I heard him pretty well.
Okay, copy that. Kip is saying they didn't hear it.
Tate. Very cool. Obviously, there's a whole lot more. But when I first met you, I really liked what you were doing. It just seemed your documentary is just documenting everything.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call it fancy, but on the same token, you don't have to pay money to watch it.
No, that and that's the thing. I just kind of wanted to make something I enjoy.
Yes.
And I mean, yeah, I do.
Well, I wanted to give. Well, just hang on a second. I wanted to give you the ultimate compliment. I watched the entire thing. The entire thing. I mean, literally, I every second of it I watched. Only because it was very, very non-fluff. It was very real. Somebody made a comment that you're one of the most dedicated, researchers out there. And just from talking to you, and you just really do seem, one, you're extremely enthusiastic, but you're mellow about it. You're just very calm, cool. You're a cool guy. So anyhow, but let's
I try to be.
yeah. So I don't know. I know you and Dean got a chance to visit. You actually visited with Dean more than I actually probably even have. But what are you guys trying to do, and why Bluff Creek? First question.
Well, it's not so the episode, it's actually a 4-part series. And then Bluff Creek was one of the areas I covered. And I always try to go to Bluff Creek every year, and being part of the Bluff Creek project, it's a very special place to me. The Patterson Gimlin film is what got me into it, so that's kind of like why I wanted to do it again. And then last year we had some stuff happen, and then I did another documentary back then, and kind of just wanted to do another one up here again on Bluff Creek, and it turned out really well. And I was like, I'm happy with what happened / trip, and so that's kind of why I wanted to go to Bluff Creek again and film there, and it's just a special place.
It's beautiful there, isn't it? It's pretty much still untouched.
Yeah, on camera or off camera, it's still beautiful. You can't go wrong.
Think about how many years have gone by since the Patterson footage, and a lot of people, just people that aren't in the know, is like, does that place still exist? And I'm like, oh yeah,
Yep.
It's as wild today as it ever was. People
probably even more sometimes if you think about it. I mean, just it depends really.
Yeah,
it depends on.
Is there logging going on in let's say within 30 miles of where the creature was filmed?
I don't think not anymore. I don't think so. I don't think they're doing logging over in that area.
Okay.
I think in other areas in the whole, Trinity, what would it be, Trinity, Humboldt area.
Right.
I think there's logging going on still around that whole vicinity, but as far as like close to the film site, I don't believe so. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to check out the doc, Dean?
Yeah, I got to watch some of it, and I'm interested. What's your actual impression or feeling or theory on what Sasquatch is? Do you sit in one camp of what it might or might not be?
I believe it's a flesh and blood creature. I don't think there's anything spiritual. So, I mean, and that's kind of where I sit, is just the whole flesh and blood deal.
No, it's certainly there's seems to be increasing debate today on what it might or might not be. And certainly I think when it was, the Paddy film's a classic example. Back when that came out, everybody thought it was flesh and blood who believed in Bigfoot. There didn't seem to be any paraphysical debate then or anything else. It seemed to, when you read those old books by John Green or Peter Byrne, or when you read old interviews with Patterson or Gimlin or any of those guys, they all seem to think it was flesh and blood.
Yeah, that's like, I don't, I know people who have had weird experiences when it's just more than flesh and blood experiences, but from my personal experiences, nothing's been, have had nothing crazy or paranormal happen in any type of my encounters that I've ever had or possibly had.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I'm with you, Tate. I'm open-minded. Don't get me wrong. We've got guests on tonight that are going to be talking about all the high strangeness and, their beliefs or their theories. And I think, Dean, you're probably just a little both ways.
Yeah, I might lean a little to paraphysical, but I also
Yeah.
think we live in a time now where we're kind of forced to make these decisions. And I don't know if, for example, Native Americans had to make that decision, whether it was entirely supernatural or
Right.
whether it was entirely physical. They kind of looked at reality in a different way to the modern man. So there was room for both. There was room for this thing to be part of this world and also part of the other. So
Right.
I tend to lean in that direction, actually.
What I like to think, though, is in the future, supernatural is going to be more and more natural.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. I do like the name supernatural versus even paranormal because it does have the word natural,
Yeah.
But I'm still like, why should I waste my time trying to pursue a paranormal Bigfoot when I'm still, we're still getting hairs on a regular basis and fingerprints and face prints and, there's scat and footprints. And so I want to make sure people know that I'm not, I'm open-minded. It's why, why we've got these, our next guests on, but I'm not going to ever stop doing normal, everyday physical research.
Yeah, and I think physical research is the main thing that we got going for this subject. That's why I think now it's starting to be taken a little more seriously, but it's still, that being said, it's still somewhat of a taboo subject in the greater scheme of things.
Yeah. It's already taboo enough, just Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Let alone Bigfoots that, are aliens or, portal walkers or dimensional. But, no, I'm so open-minded, very humble. I've had a few weird things too in the field, but I'm always like, well, how do I connect? You know what I mean? You can't always connect something weird.
It's a good example. Like in January, I was with some buddies of mine filming for Small Town Monsters, and I saw like my first orb, and I was like, okay, that's weird because we had Bigfoot activity that like an hour earlier. Is it connected? I don't know. I tend to think it's not because there wasn't really any evidence to prove that it is connected or not, but it is weird.
Yeah, until somebody films a Bigfoot holding an orb.
Yeah, you can't really say for sure.
Yeah. There's just no, I don't know. It's just, to me, there's no reason to research on that level because I'm not really even sure what you can do other than bring maybe an EMP meter.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know what Sasquatch is to begin with.
No.
There's so little we know about it, and then I think jumping off the deep end saying it's paranormal or supernatural is a big stretch. Even we don't even have one in a zoo, or even the hair samples are sometimes sketchy when we find it. They're not really conclusive.
Yeah, but on the same token, all this stuff, very well could be connected, and I think that's Dean. Why don't you go ahead and just state your belief kind of quick?
Sure. I mean, my belief is that an awful lot of things which we think are different, paranormal or anomalous phenomena are actually there's actually a root cause behind this multitude of phenomena which we experience. So I do think that potentially UFOs and Blessed Virgin Mary sightings and Sasquatch and the fairies and a whole range of things, all the way down to hauntings and poltergeist activity, might be the manifestation of something that we don't yet understand, and perhaps presents itself to us the way we expect it to in different situations, in different time periods, in different cultural contexts.
And you may be 100% right. That's what makes this all fun, and why judge somebody else for a different belief or a different theory when, to me, it's all these different theories that makes it so interesting.
Oh yeah, nobody knows. I mean, that's the thing. I think people who come forward and are so convinced that they have the answer. It's like, how do you have the
Right.
answer? There's so little. I mean, you're right. There are things like footprints, and there's things like hair samples, and there's broader theories like the one I espouse, but there's no way of telling who actually has the handle of the truth. And incidentally, there might be a number of different things which are true. There might be different phenomena which we think, and I just quickly with the UFO phenomena, I often think, for example, a UAP sighting on a Navy camera, that might actually just be advanced military technology, and the thing you see at your bed might be a nightmare, and the light you see out in the backfield might be swamp gas. But maybe driving along a highway at night when you see something land, that's genuinely something. So it might be the same with Bigfoot. All these things, it mightn't be just one phenomenon we're looking at. There might be multiple things people are engaging with.
Well, how did you get interested in this topic, Tate?
Bored. When I was young, just bored, kind of sitting around the home and going to school. Like, there's nothing interesting. And then, like I said, the Patterson-Gimlin film, it was actually because of Monster Quest, one of the reasons I got into the Bigfoot subject, and watching that and all that. I was like, this is really interesting. And then seeing the Patterson-Gimlin film, like, I was thinking, that's real. And you can see behind me the picture.
Yeah.
It's, I was watching it thinking, man, that could be real, And so I was like, I want to look into this more, and it just seemed to draw me. So I was like, I have to just look into this and figure out for myself what's out there.
Was the Patterson footage kind of like, for me, it was a 3-second deal. You just saw that and go, that's a real living creature.
Yeah, that's what my brain went to.
Yeah. It's just, you see a guy in a suit, it looks like a guy in a suit.
Mm-hmm. This didn't.
So I'm just curious, Dean, what you thought about, the first time you saw it. Did you go, man, that looks, just like a real animal? Or was your impression different?
When I first saw Patterson-Gimlin as a kid, it probably would have been on something like In Search of, or one of those great monster movies. I was little, admittedly. I was completely convinced. I thought there were, aliens visiting us. I thought the Bigfoot lived in the Pacific Northwest. I thought there was a plesiosaur in Loch Ness. So back when it's hard for me to put any, kind of adult perspective on that, but I believed in all of it. It's obviously what kind of led me to still do it. I was so obsessed with it all when I was little.
Yeah, I just, I call it the 3-second rule. I still rely on that. When I see a piece of footage, it's like, it's fake. Or people's reactions. That's one thing I loved about your doc. I mean, you guys did not stage anything.
No, and that was the whole point. And then it was funny because the title of the series, Search for Sabe. I like the Sabe name because it's another name for Bigfoot. Yep. And then I was watching Survivor Man Bigfoot, and in the Bluff Creek episode, he mentions the name Sabe among the 7 teachings somewhere in Manitoba, Canada. I forget the tribe, but each animal in the 7 teachings has a different attribute. One represents like courage or something, or strength. But Bigfoot, Sabe, represents honesty. And that's really what I wanted to do with this documentary, do it honesty and just show you like, hey, this is what happened. Nothing happened. It doesn't happen. Or if it did, we did. And you'll see our reactions. Sometimes we might be genuinely excited when we think something happened, but it turned out to be nothing. And that's really what happens in the field. I mean, we're humans. It happens to us. It happens to everybody. You get excited and you realize, oh, man, that was nothing. But
yeah. So can people join this Bluff Creek Society? I mean, you're looking for more members or no?
They can, if they want to come out to Bluff Creek, they can for sure. I don't know if we're opening, getting any new members yet. So I'll have to talk to the head people about that one.
Yeah.
But we take people down to the film site if they want to come and see it, if they don't know how to get there. So we take them there safely so they don't get hurt or lost, because it can be tricky getting down there.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're running a little bit late here. I think we got to get our next guests up. But Tate, would you be willing to come back for a full hour and a half?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, we'll get you back. We will get you back. We'll get you booked.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So thank you. Dean will put the link for your doc? Is it open to the public now?
Not yet. It comes out the 20th of this
Okay.
month, October 20th, the 54th anniversary.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Well, we'll throw the link up, and people can take a look at it.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Thank
Tate.
you guys.
Thanks. So why don't you introduce Mark and Ron? Whoop, you got your mic mute, Dean.
Whoops. I was saying I was fortunate enough to get to chat to both of them before the show, and they're both
cool.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And so is their book, which is published by Hanger One, and it's the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revisited, written by Ron Meyer and Mark Reeder. And it's kind of the follow-up to the fantastic documentary, The Bigfoot Alien Connection, which is, I think, it's been watched like 4 or 5 million times across different streaming platforms. Like, it's an incredibly successful documentary. And anybody after this interview who's interested in seeing it can go and find it very easily on YouTube. And of course, I would recommend they check out the book.
And I believe it's on Amazon.
It's probably on Amazon as well.
I
Yeah, I think
believe
it's across
so,
a
yes.
bunch of platforms. Yeah. So I think it's on Prime. I think it's on YouTube. We can ask them anyway where
Yeah.
they prefer people to watch it. But I guess without any further ado, welcome to the show, Ron Meyer and Mark Reeder.
Good evening.
There. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Doug. It's
Hey,
been
Mark.
Oh,
There we
Doug,
go.
good to meet you, Doug.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, Mark. We've never talked.
No, we haven't. I
Never.
just got the last 15 minutes of your guest, your previous guest, and that was fascinating.
Yeah. He's a cool, very cool guy. I'm just was excited to meet him. Certain people you meet and you just go, they're just so sincere and feet are on the ground, and you can just tell he was a hardworking guy. So, and Ron, you know how tough it is to make docs. You've made a lot of them.
Well, you helped me on my first project, chasing Bigfoot. If you
No, that wasn't your first project, was it?
my first Bigfoot project was.
Oh yeah, Bigfoot.
Not my first project.
Yeah.
I go back to the mid '90s, like you.
Yeah.
Cable.
I'm back in the 80s, man. I'm way back there. I'm getting in the ancient mode now.
It all comes around, hey.
Yeah, it does. So, why don't we start with Mark? Mark, do you want to just kind of give us a little bit of your background?
Well, I'm an author. I worked for Center Communications, Ron's company, as a writer of scripts and as the vetter of scripts. They would hand me scripts to either edit or write, and then I would also make certain that the information in them was correct. These were for the educational videos that Ron's company did. I've got a background in history, a master's degree from the University of Cincinnati, and that's one of the reasons Ron hired me for his company years ago. Other than that, I'm retired, and I help Ron on his mostly I help Ron on his book writing projects. So occasionally he sends scripts to me still.
Very cool. Ron, you're next.
I'm next, hey. Well, I got into the film business probably in the mid '70s, starting with public television. Moved to Boulder, Colorado, acquired a distribution company. Started producing for the cable industry, like you, and eventually I sold my distribution company and went back to producing, which was my first love. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was hired by a company to produce a series on Bigfoot, and I knew nothing about it at the time. And so I needed a lot of help, but it turned out to be Chasing Bigfoot, a 5-part series. Done fairly well across streaming platforms, and back then a little bit on DVD when DVD was still viable. And if I remember correctly, you put me in touch with a lot of people, including the wife of Patterson, who wasn't sure who owned the darn film. But just as a follow-up, Russell Accord, who he is from Expedition Bigfoot, has just produced a movie featuring Bob Gimlin.
Yeah.
He tells the whole story in a wonderful way with animation about how he filmed, what was the process that led to that footage, which, I mean, they rode horses back and forth up and down there for days and maybe weeks before they finally got that picture, and then they
Yeah.
had one heck of a time
Yeah.
getting out because there was a flash flood that, to some extent, almost killed them both. So it's quite an interesting little movie if you'd like
Yeah.
to.
I was just with Russ this last weekend.
Yeah,
Russell Accord. Yeah, great guy.
he is.
So okay, so you're doing this film. One, obviously you pitched to do the film. I'm sure nobody came to you and said, "Hey, Ron, do you want to do a Bigfoot film?" I'm sure it was your idea, correct?
No, it wasn't. The company came to me.
Really?
Well, in fact, they're in Minneapolis, right next to Mill Creek Entertainment. Are you familiar with them?
Not even. I've never even met him.
They're probably the largest independent distributor of DVDs. This was to be a DVD product. And they said, well, I did a lot of stuff for them, some very successful series. And they said, well, they saw this interest in this area, something different, the anomalous
Yeah.
was growing, and said, why don't you do something on Bigfoot? And I had, well, okay, money was going to be good, so I thought, why not? And in the process of doing that series, I interviewed a lot of people who had experiences, and I was convinced that they weren't lying.
Yeah.
Something happened, and the commonalities were interesting. But it wasn't until I met Jim Myers, who I think you know too, who runs the Sasquatch Outpost.
Yep, he's a good friend. Yep.
He took us out on a hunt, and then later on, I interviewed him, and he said, I've been out there so long. When other people are out there looking, they never really get good video. They never get good pictures when they're looking. Most of the incidents where people found Bigfoot or saw Bigfoot showed up by surprise. They weren't looking. I think that's your experience too. It seems to be your experience. Yep. So it's a little bit of a more miraculous thing in that sense. But he said, I don't think it's a flesh and blood creature. I think it's something else. I heard too many stories of strange things associated with them, like morphing into a tree or orbs around them. And I just recently talked to somebody who was out there at Skinwalker Ranch in the early days, and they saw something that was kind of like a cross between a dog man and a Bigfoot run in front of them and then just disappear, and they went out and found tracks. So, it's the tide is changing.
Yeah.
Because when I started making that series, I would say it was 99% hairy big creature in the woods, some kind of ape, supported largely by the footprints, as you know.
Yeah.
And so when Jim said that, I said, that's fascinating to me. I never thought of that. What would that mean? So for me, I hadn't looked into the alien thing since I used to read science fiction back in the day when I was quite young. And so I said, well, I got to learn about aliens, so I'll make a movie about it. That's how, and look deeper into anybody who might talk to me about anything that might be non-living flesh creature only, and see what they had to say about their experiences. And I ran into quite a few guys and a few women who shared that view, and I got onto the idea of paranormal hotspots in the process of making the film.
So what do you think Bigfoot is, Mark?
I'm of the opinion that it is not a flesh and blood creature. Same as Ron. I wanted to add something to what Ron was saying when he was talking about interviewing people. Almost on a weekly basis, when Ron started these projects 5 years ago, he and I would meet for coffee, and we'd be talking out loud outside at Boulder coffee houses. And the number of people that walked up to us and started to talk about their experiences or the things that they had seen or witnessed was phenomenal. It seemed like we couldn't get through a conversation without somebody coming up and saying, oh yeah, by the way, I've had an unusual paranormal or supernatural experience. But as we, to get back to your question, as we've been look at this phenomenon, I've never actually believed that Bigfoot existed as a flesh and blood creature. I'm very skeptical of that. But the idea of a paranormal event where an energy source or a portal can open and something be revealed in that moment um, strikes truthfully to me. So that's for me, Bigfoot is more of an experience on the paranormal or energy range than as an actual flesh and blood creature.
Have you had paranormal experiences in other areas of your life?
I've had a couple that were I can't explain. The one that really shocked me the most, if you don't mind my telling you it.
No, go ahead.
I used to live in Seattle, and there's a place in Seattle called Ravenna Park, which is a beautiful half-mile run down into a ravine, empties out onto a soccer field, and I used to run it all the time. And then one evening I was running, it was still fairly light out, and I'm running and I hear these footsteps behind me, and I figure, oh, there's a runner behind me. And so it sounded like they were moving faster than me. So I kind of moved to the edge of the trail and looked behind, and there was nobody there, but the footsteps still were there. These footsteps followed me and chased me through that Ravenna Park, up and down these different paths that are in the park, until I finally ran out of the park as fast as I could, because I got to tell you, I was a bit scared. And when I turned around, they ended. But the whole time, this something is following me, but it's not showing itself.
Yeah.
So that to me was one of the first experiences that told me there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye.
Well, I've experienced even phantom footsteps. One time, don't know what to think of it. Just kind of put it in the, as Stanton Friedman would say, put it in my gray basket. And so what about, let's get Ron on here. Ron, what have you had other paranormal experiences in your life? Have you seen a UFO? Have you seen a ghost? Have you had things like Mark did?
I've had multiple paranormal anomalous experiences dating back to when I was a kid. I was obsessed with astronomy and the sky and everything like that when I was in my teens, and I put a platform on my roof of my garage, and I had made a 6-inch Cassegrainian telescope to watch all the time. And one evening when I was up there, I would say I saw what might be a UAP, a big light source coming towards me for a while. I immediately called my astronomy buddy and said, "Did you see anything?" But no look. So in between, I've had many experiences. I've done a lot of meditation, had out-of-body experiences, had non-dual experiences. I teach flow, which gets people into non-dual states where they can perform skills in a rapid way, in a way they couldn't before. Well, I'll tell you my most recent one. My son-in-law, Alan McGargle, he puts on the Bigfoot weekend, family Bigfoot weekend in Bailey, Colorado with Jim Myers. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It started with Alan in Ohio, very successful. About 40 people come to the. Have you been to his place? That's the Outpost.
No, I haven't even been to the Outpost yet.
Okay. So there's a thing called Glen Isle, which is an old-fashioned resort from the 19th century with a large piece of property. You can camp and stay in cabins, and families or just people sign up, and about 45 people show up to experience looking for Bigfoot for the 3 days. And most people have some sort of experience, and they go out on night ops with Alan and Jim and a few other people who are experienced Bigfoot hunters. But on the night of the evening before the last night op, I come in and I do a meditation, open mind, vipassana, kind of open mind meditation for everybody, where they get more in touch with what's going on and learn a little bit about how our senses, affect what arises in our minds and so on. And they get into a kind of an altered state. And so when that concluded, I had this idea earlier that day, and this is a sequence of synchronicities that occurred. I went to give a DVD to the the owner of the resort, but she wasn't there, and the person manning the gift shop told me right off the bat when I gave her the DVD, you know, I was abducted by aliens. So I said, okay, well, tell me about it. And she did. It was something that happened when she was a teen. She said, I want to show you something else on the property. So we went outside, and she took me to this very old ponderosa tree. And she said, this is a culturally modified tree, kind of like a bonsai tree that was done by the Ute Indians probably a long time ago, a couple hundred years ago, maybe 300 years ago. And it was shaped and configured in a very unusual way. And she showed me there were places where they had taken medicine out of the tree, scratched it, and she said these are prayer trees or signal trees, and they're very sacred, which I thought was cool. So I had this idea because when we were at Tom Powell's property in Oregon, a psychic had shown a group of people and put their hands on a tree and tried to communicate with it or get energy from it. We got a single photograph and a series of photographs where light emanated from the tree itself, which is we could not explain. So I got it in my head back in Bailey. Let's see if people want to go there and give that a try and see what might happen. And surprisingly, everybody did. And they went to like in threes and fours. Somebody should get on a tree, and everybody was having experiences. And they were talking about them. And then finally I sat down, let's you and I try it. So we put our hands on the tree, closed our eyes. And after a little while, I opened my eyes slightly, looked over at Alan, and there was a Bigfoot behind him, which I would describe as a Bigfoot. And he was oscillating or vibrating, sort of kind of waffling in and out of existence at the same time. You know, as these contact experiences have a quality or a taste to them, kind of like, oh, wow, or when you have an enlightenment experience, you know something special has just happened. And after that settled down, I said to Alan, there's a creature behind you. And he said, I know. And he had been experiencing this phenomena of something like that in connection with him and guiding him at multiple paranormal hotspots. And he said he felt it come up in our accounts, jive perfectly in terms of the size, but he only felt it as a presence, and I saw it as a creature.
So well, let me interrupt you. Do you think they're metaphysical? Because they're obviously leaving tracks.
Well, I think I told you. So, do you want my current thought on it now?
Sure. Love to. Sure.
Yeah, this is a novel. It's just one that kind of appeals to me. Is that when these things show up like that, they're maybe like a hologram or a puppet. That they don't have real agency, but for a short period of time, they can manifest in a physical form. But what's behind that manifestation is what people call a non-human sentient intelligence that's not making it, that itself doesn't make itself available, but it can do all these things that can integrate into our physical sensing systems. That's sort of where I'm thinking right now. That no proof, but seems like it's consistent with a lot of occurrences.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm still just flesh and blood, but I like to entertain the data. I love to hear people's stories. I think everybody should at least listen to people. I don't throw out data. I just have never needed or felt a need to go that route, because if I did, I guess it would discourage me from doing research. That makes sense.
I would
collection research. We're actually collecting something.
Well,
not just.
Right now there are some major projects that are designed just to do that from a scientific point of view, with decent funding and some really highly educated people, like the Galileo project, for example.
I think of the money they spent at Skinwalker. With the NIMS project.
I don't think you have to give up science if you go in that direction.
Yeah.
I think most people see it as a boon to finally legitimize scientific pursuit of these anomalous events.
Well, I would just figure that I'm limited in what I can do beyond a physical. I'm not a theoretical physicist. I don't have, I'm not a NASA scientist. So what I can do is collect here, collect scat, collect footprints. That's about it. You know,
No, that's fine. That's good.
I could bring an EMP meter and I could photograph it doing something, but I don't think it would get me very far. But I'm very open-minded to listening and discussing and hearing. I probably hear one story every week. You know, that's not a normal physical Bigfoot story. And I listen, I take note and kind of just, keep an open mind. So,
Go ahead.
and I know that like Dean, he's, I guess come to some, would you call it a conclusion, Dean? Or would you call it just kind of an inference?
I think it's a theory.
Theory?
There's a book called The Cryptoterrestrials, which is somewhat related to this. It was written by the late Mac Tonnies, and he thought that extraterrestrial visitations, as we think of them today, are a similar phenomenon that we've had for a very long time. And he thought there was another terrestrial race, hence cryptoterrestrial, that was humanoid but not human, that was playing these kind of games with us. But the point I want to get to is in the end of that book, Greg Bishop, who's a wonderful ufologist, one of my favorite thinkers in the field, wrote that what he thinks is needed are more Mac Tonnies. Mac Tonnies was dead by the time his book was released, because we need more theories. We need more theoreticians. Now, it's important to gather data, I think, but we've been gathering data now in the UFO field as well as in cryptozoology. We've been gathering data for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and we still haven't really hit any conclusion. And what I think we have is so much noise now, it's hard to find the signal within that noise. So while I'm not disparaging people collecting data, because that's obviously important, I think we need theory. So when I espouse something, it's just a theory. I don't have enough confidence in my theory to say I'm dead right. But I suspect for a number of reasons, particularly that we don't have a body, and not because maybe the Bigfoots bury their bodies, or maybe they decay in the woods and small rodents come and take the last of the bones. But I find it so hard to believe, and this is what leads me to the paraphysical explanation or alternative explanation. In America, where there's more guns than people, God bless the Second Amendment, I have no problem with that. But I can't believe that nobody has shot a Bigfoot and brought it in yet. I just find it so hard to believe. And I know somebody mentioned in the comments a minute ago, Stan Gordon from Pennsylvania. I know he's done lots of studies on the relationship between UFO landings and Bigfoot. And some of his recordings have people having shot the Bigfoot. So it's not that they're not being shot at, hit the Bigfoot and nothing happens. I'm sure we're all familiar with those stories. So again, if they're flesh and blood apes or relict hominids, I find it difficult to believe nobody hasn't shot one yet and brought it into Fox News and dumped it on the stairs and said, there's your Bigfoot. That's again, theory, but that's what I base it on.
I mean, these are all legitimate arguments. I just tend not to want to argue with anybody because I don't know anything.
I'm the same, yeah.
So I'm just open-minded. There's a lot of people that are very closed-minded in both directions. They're paranormal and, and that's it. And there are other people that are physical and that's it. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what they are. I have no idea. So then people probably get mad at me for that too.
Yeah.
Being neutral.
One thing to remember is that theory often precedes a known fact or an idea that can be proven.
Yeah.
So a classic example is science fiction of the early 20th century, where they talked about spaceships and portals and Telstar. And 1960 comes along and Telstar is launched. And in the 21st century, Professor Jack Scudder, he's a physicist, is talking about portals, magnetic portals that actually can transmit or transfer data from one point to another. So there's nothing to say that a flesh and blood Bigfoot couldn't exist. But there's a lot to be able to look at it and say, what if a flesh and blood Bigfoot were something along the lines of what Ron was talking about, a data point, or a hologram that appeared through a magnetic resonance portal for a moment in time, you could have a hunter actually shoot it and have no effect on it, give credence to the one idea. You could also answer the fact that nobody's ever bagged a Bigfoot and brought it in, because that guy would be a multimillionaire instantly if he did so. So we've got, in a sense, we have technology of the 21st century catching up with the theories of the 20th century, is what I'm trying to say.
It's true. I know we have 1 million game trail cameras out there, 2 million, 10 million, God knows. I've never seen a good trail cam picture. Those are the arguments. Those are the things that make us all doubt, what I mean? The existence, period. So if if somebody did kill one tomorrow with a car or a truck, then it was done properly and made public, how would that change your perception? Or maybe it wouldn't.
Are you asking me or Mark?
Oh, yeah. Ron, why don't you take that?
It'd be very interesting to see what people who study the body would have to say about it. It wouldn't be just the beginning of it, right?
Right.
It'd be a pretty thorough investigation of what this creature's, lineage was. What if it turned out to not be of this DNA sequence that started way back whenever it started? What if it were, something totally different that was in its, makeup? That would be interesting. If it turned out to be that you could pinpoint it in relationship to, say, modern orangutans, or if it was some vestige Neanderthal or something like that, that would be interesting too. I find it all very interesting to figure out how it would place in that situation. But I don't think that would end the kind of, my guess is, according to the data, I don't think that would end the experiences people would have and continue to have regarding a mystical, strange kind of experience of Bigfoot. I don't think it would go away. So that would just say, well, is this an anomaly, this creature, and was everything else something else? Is there really, 500 of them out there, however many? It's got to be more than one, right? If there's one, there should be more. So how does it relate to them? How does it reproduce? Be a lot of stuff to find out, wouldn't there?
Yeah. So what do you think, Mark, is so polarizing about the two theories? I mean, why are they so polarizing for some people?
I'll answer that question, but I wanted to add something to what Ron said.
Okay.
And that is that if somebody bagged a Bigfoot, it would just open the door for thousands more questions.
Yeah.
That people would have to ask, including, how did it get here? Was it beamed in a la Star Trek or something? But as far as the polarization is concerned, I think that there's a phenomenon among lawyers, which is that they cherry pick their evidence to prove their case. And I think we have something very similar happening in the world today, but just in general, is that people will find things that fit their cultural milieu and their cultural view, and they'll say, aha, this proves that I'm right about something. And Ron can attest to my own feelings about having to be absolutely right about something. And I'm very fortunate to have Ron as my mentor, because I'm now swinging around to the point of, as you are, Doug, of saying of accepting what people have to say and say, okay, this could be real, instead of getting on my high horse and saying, aha, right, I have the answer. But I think a lot of us still are in that sort of cultural idea that you're either with me or against me. I have the data because I've cherry picked it, and this proves my point. And that's what makes it polarizing. And unfortunately, that kind of polarization isn't just in the field of the paranormal or the supernatural.
So true. What do you think could be done then in research? We'll ask Mark first and then Ron. What can be done in research with your beliefs in basically the supernatural Bigfoot or the alien Bigfoot? What can be done then for research, or is it not needed?
Well, I think the second part of your question is one that I'd be more interested in, whether it's needed or not.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things about the supernatural or the paranormal, whether it's UFOs, UAPs, or Bigfoot, or cryptozoology, is that this allows people to frame their existence, frame their idea of who they are in a different way than we have for centuries. So 1,000 years ago, if you saw a thunderbird, for example, and you were out in the plains of Minnesota and were a Lakota Sioux Indian, you would be looking at a thunderbird, and this is how you would explain it. And it came to you as a vision to give you an idea of how you were supposed to live your life. So I think that there's something similar happening here with these paranormal experiences, that they aren't just random events that happen to people. I think that people draw these events to them for in some ways, and that these events allow them to see, look at themselves more closely, and to give them a larger vision of what's happening in the world. In a sense, in order to tell them how they're supposed to live their lives. But something more, even more profound, is to look at their own life and see whether what they're doing is a good thing or a bad thing. So that, to me, is the real crux of what's happening with these paranormal experiences that people have.
That was well said, Mark.
Well, Ron and I have talked about it a great deal.
That's well
owe a
said.
lot of it to him.
And I'm curious where you stand, Ron, on what you think we can do. I mean, obviously, we don't know what it is. We want to know what it is. I'm sure you want to know what it is. I'm sure you'd like to find out tonight. But what can we do if it's not just a plain old everyday flesh and blood, poop in the woods creature? What can we do for research to learn more?
Well, my approach, humbly, because I'm just a filmmaker, was to go to these things what I identified as paranormal hotspots, where multiple, let's call them paranormal phenomena, were occurring in a geographical area, usually with one or two people were kind of a focus of it, and at least from the standpoint of making a show about it, because they could be our guide for the place. So as to and we went to quite a few places, and we did get multiple phenomena that we could capture on the camera. So it's creating data points in a kind of a humble filmmaking way. But I think the model right now would be Skinwalker Ranch, where you have a lot of money. You have scientists who are aware of it. They're definitely in a paranormal hotspot, where you have these multiple phenomena occurring across a relatively small geographical area. By the way, we did a little investigation right next to the property a couple weeks ago, well, a month ago now, and they're bringing all the scientific equipment and everything they can to see how whatever it is going to interact with them, because you're asking for communication or interaction when you go into these places, and when things happen, they become data points in some way that are just like, a footprint or something. They're a record of things that showed up. And if you're operating on the assumption of why you'd want to explore this, is that, the big question is, are we alone?
Right.
And that the consensus seems to be that when this stuff shows up in this way, that there's something we're missing, something behind it. And just for the sake of it, let's just call it a non-human intelligence in it.
Well, wouldn't communication, Ron, be the only way to be able to repeat an experiment, capture it and do it again, to actually gather evidence.
Yeah, I think, everybody's finding out that since the new way of kind of interacting and getting communication from whatever it is by how it manipulates our technology. And that's pretty common across the board. Every place we went where we did an investigation, something messed with our technology.
Batteries, mainly.
Many different things. If you read the book, we list them all, but batteries are certainly one of them.
Yeah.
But, equipment not working, equipment stopping for no reason at all, screwing up a trail cam in a way that nobody's ever seen before. That's where the precognitive aspect comes in the sense that whatever it is, it must sort of know what we can understand, what our technological limitations are, what we'd be alert to. So it's kind of like spoon feeding us in a way. You have a child, you don't tell them everything about sex on the first day, the second year of their life. They got to learn this stuff. So they're kind of spoon feeding us. That's the current idea, with little things that are anomalous and in some way they make us curious and say, well, what's that about? And in that process, we start to see patterns and maybe get a little bit of a communication. By the way, today I just got a series of text messages from somebody in Western Pennsylvania that's captured on audio, something that sounds like Ron Moorhead Sierra sounds. And
Wow.
we've been invited out bring our cameras and see what other things they got on. They think they have a Bigfoot there and they've gotten light phenomena. So as people become familiar with that, this is okay and this is interesting. These create what we might call laboratories in the field for doing research on the paranormal to see what patterns might emerge across multiple experiences and places. That's sort of what people are doing, and I think the model for that, if you got a lot of money, is the Skinwalker Ranch activity.
What I liked about the Bigfoot alien connection, both the film and the book, is that in, I suppose, physical Bigfoot research or physical Bigfoot investigation or theory, the Bigfoot is the mystery. It's like we have to get, evidence that this creature exists. But when I watched both the film and the book, I was very conscious of is in this more metaphysical approach, the solution isn't finding out what Bigfoot is so much as Bigfoot and other anomalous phenomena suggests that there's a bigger mystery about what the nature of reality is. Is that something you guys are conscious of when you're looking at this phenomena?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, before Mark speaks, let me just say that putting Bigfoot in the title, of course, is a marketing thing.
Well, one of the things I think that it's important to understand is that if we go back, say, 2,000 years, and we or back to the battle for Troy in the Iliad, you have the Greeks and the Trojans talking to the gods in a way that we would now consider to be a sort of paranormal or supernatural event. That basically follows up whether you're talking about Muhammad, the founder of Islam, or you're talking about Francis of Assisi or Paul or any of these up to about the start of the Industrial Revolution. And it continues through the start of the Industrial Revolutions because in America in the 1800s and 1700s, you have a huge number of sightings of these crypto animals. But somewhere along the line, industrialization said, hey, we've got a better way to communicate. We've got a better way to understand what's going on around us, and we're going to call it science. And anything that doesn't agree with science, we're going to say is the supernatural or the paranormal, and it's outside of science and really isn't that important. And I believe that over the course of about 150 years, we basically said, okay, the paranormal isn't important. The science is what's going to save our planet. It's going to keep, it's going to get rid of smallpox, which it did, and polio, which it did, and a host of other diseases. So we sort of put the paranormal and the supernatural on the back burner and said they're not really that important. Well, Henry James in the 19th century wrote that it really is important. And now I think we're finding in the 21st century, with the advent of the internet and people being able to discuss their stories, that the paranormal, whether it's Bigfoot or UFOs or UAPs, is extremely important to individuals. And that's where I think we need to understand that as technology advances, it opens up more doors. And it closes some, but it actually opens up more doors. And with the advent of the internet, we're finding these doors opening once more to the paranormal, the supernatural, saying, hey, there's an experience here that means something to these people that have it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the problem with the paranormal, of course. It's very personalized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always talk to people who have seen. I've talked to even people that have seen Bigfoot step out of portals, and yet it's a personal experience. They're telling me their experience. I don't know what to think because I haven't seen it. I have not seen any physical proof, but that doesn't mean I doubt the guy's story. You know, why should I? What in the world motivation do the people have to make up such a crazy story? There's none. Especially if they're telling me in confidence, right?
Yeah.
They don't even want their name used, or I'd be giving you the guy's name.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of befuddles me that somebody would talk about Bigfoot and lie about it, especially as you said, when they're talking to you in confidence. It just doesn't make any sense.
I was just with a guy just last weekend who was telling me, a very detailed story about them seeing two guys, and I know both of them, and they both swear they saw the same thing. This portal open up, and these orbs came out of it, but they were doing Bigfoot research.
Mm-hmm.
Another twist on the whole thing. But what in the heck, what in the heck did they see, and why the hell are they telling me this crazy story? They have nothing to gain by it, is my point.
Well, they have nothing to gain from it, maybe financially or, something along those lines. But as Ron talked about with the number of people that have talked to him and both of us when we were in our coffee houses, I think that there's a desire to talk about these things to someone who will listen with an objective ear, instead of saying, "Oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. You've had a little bit too much of the crazy juice, or you're a few bricks shy of a full load." Because it has a profound meaning to them, whether it's orbs coming out of a portal or in Ron and Alan's case, touching the tree and having that experience. Ron and I were in Sequoia National, we're in Yosemite, and we were touching some of the large sequoia. And I want to tell you, you touch those things and it's absolutely phenomenal, the amount of energy that passes through you at that moment from those trees. And other people might touch them and say, "Oh, this is just another tree." But if you really go up to that tree and say, "Tell me something," you get a surge of energy that comes through.
That's interesting.
And so I tell you that because you're listening.
Yeah.
But there's other people I wouldn't tell that to because they'd be measuring me for a straitjacket or something.
Could you tell us?
So what's the strangest story? Oh, I'm sorry, Dean. I didn't even know.
No, you go, Doug. I'll ask.
Well, I was just going to ask. What's the strangest story that you've heard, Ron?
Well, can I tell you what we captured?
Oh yeah, love to. You can show us what you captured.
I could. Yeah, I did a movie called Alien Contact in the Rockies. You're in it talking about Jim, the possibility of that being that he's channeling his outpost. But the other half of the movie is that when we set out to open a portal on our land, we own 40 acres near Estes Park and Rocky Mountain National Park in a valley. And we started out, we got an idea from somebody how we might open a portal. I wanted to see if I could open a portal as a challenge. And we're filming this all the way as we go, by the way. And we thought we had an indication that there might be some activity going on this land. It's isolated. It's gate locked. There's only a few of us there, so and it's pristine. It's an extension of the whole park ecosystem. And we created what we gifting sites. Should I say what gifting sites are? It's where you set something out.
Right.
We put feathers in a bottle and hid them in crevices so that and see if anything wanted to play. If something would pull them out or move them or something, that'd be an indication that there was something there that wanted to play or communicate. And maybe 3 or 4 times we went there and nothing happened. But then we finally had the event where the feather was out of the bottle, stuck nearby in a crevice, and only some other human being or something weird or a Bigfoot maybe could open that up and stick the feather outside the bottle. So we thought we had something going. And then maybe after this, maybe 3 months later, we went to our site, look at our gifting site, and it was cold. And there was a mutilated deer dropped right at our gifting site. And which was like, where in the heck did that come from? And that freaked us out. But then eventually we went and took some readings, and we found that there were enormous electromagnetic fluctuations going on, which interested us. So we set up a trail cam, looking at the deer at the site and all that. And make a story short, we had 4 incidences where this is a digital trail cam. You got the static effect of something like from the old days, the snow you'd see on analog television. At least Doug and I are old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
And there was a shape of a dome over the deer carcass. And 3 times we could see of the 4 that were like that. Otherwise the camera performed beautifully. We got bobcats, mountain lions, foxes at night and during and birds that like magpies on the carcass during the day. So these are nighttime images, and by messing around with it, we could see that there was something crawling around in the frame that was hardly there, but on a couple of occasions we were able to isolate it, and they looked like creatures you'd never seen before. One looked like a baby brontosaurus, and the other looked like something like a pig, cat, dog, something or other. And they were never totally there. They were waffling in and out. Now, that was our example of opening a portal, at least in language-wise. At the time, we weren't aware. We didn't have to take thermal images. We didn't have the device at the time, but we captured all this on film, and we showed the creatures to a variety of people, and they can't identify them as anything earthly. Some say, well, there's this underground world of dinosaurs, hidden in the caves or something, and that's where they were coming from, if you want a weird speculation. So we did capture something we can show people, and they can go see the movie. And I think it's on Vudu right now, and maybe a few others. I just can't remember.
Interesting. What's the strangest story you've heard? And nothing to do with you or Mark, just one that you've heard.
Can I think for a moment?
Sure. Mark, do you got one while Ron's thinking?
Well, again, when we were out at the coffee house one day, we were discussing specifically a book we were writing called Aliens 2035, published by your company. And this couple comes up to us because we're talking about what we called the probe, which was a device sent by another planet millions of light years away to investigate life on different planets. And this couple comes up to us, and very seriously, they started talking about how they had been out at Burning Man, and on their way back from Burning Man, they had an experience. It wasn't really an abduction experience so much as it was an experience of where they had met these aliens that were talking to them about life on Earth. And we're like, okay. And I'm a skeptic. I'm an extreme skeptic on these things, but I'm with Ron, I'm trying to learn to listen to people instead of just blowing them off. And I'm listening to these people, and they're talking about this profound experience they have where the aliens are giving them wisdom. And then the aliens left, and they drove back to Boulder. And apparently they had just arrived in Boulder a couple of hours before Ron and I ran into them at the coffee house. So that, to me, is the greatest experience that I've had that somebody's talked to me about.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, so do you know who Ray Hernandez is?
Yes.
Ray's obsessed with accumulating an archive of these impossible events because of a transformational event that he had. He was a skeptic, science-based guy, and an object showed up in front of him and his wife, and he saw a spaceship and she saw an angel. And I thought that if that's the case, that indicates that that something's impressing upon our sensory system, so that we can, our brain creates what we see, hear, smell, and all that sort of stuff. It has to integrate it. So something made our brain system show two different things to two different people. So indicating and kind of supporting the idea that something intelligence is working behind the scenes there to make this acceptable to us. Now, I would say that was those kinds of experience. And then recently there's this case that people talk about, and they didn't tell me personally, where these people were driving in a car and they saw a spaceship and a variety of things, but they took a picture of it. And when the picture showed up, it was none of those things. It was some little small dot, like a rift in space or something.
Yeah.
So I kind of like these stories where you get some insight into what might be happening.
Do you think equipment malfunction is pretty good proof of something weird's going on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, because we have technology, like Mark said, if it's messing with our science, and that's pretty profound. The cases of probably the other story. I did a whole little short film on the Mario Wood story that tells his encounter out in our missile fields, where he had a contact experience, a very complex one, with a UFO over our nukes. And as you know, there's a lot of talk about some relationship between nukes and whatever it might be, letting us know, for example, that, hey, we can destroy you anytime you want, or we're not going to let you destroy yourself, or what you've done with the atom is fascinating with us. 3 possibilities there. So Mario told me his whole story from beginning to end. Other people have just grabbed little bits and pieces because, that's how you tell stories. But I thought I'd let him tell his whole story, and that's probably the most remarkable thing I've heard. Because it's so complex, complete. He even saw grays. You know what grays are? Probably everybody in your audience.
Sure.
I mean, if you think about it, if something's going to represent to us that's like an alien form, is probably nothing better than a gray, because it kind of looks like how we might evolve in the future, and it's non-threatening. The thing is that they in themselves seem very weak and frail. So if you wanted to show us the face of the body of some alien that wouldn't totally freak us out, I think a gray would be a perfect example.
Ron, I'd rather see a big muscular alien in my living room than some skinny little tiny thing any day.
Well, you're a tough guy,
Oh man,
You live out in the woods half the
to
time.
me, little creatures freak me out. I'd rather see a big tall one standing there.
Tomorrow it'll arrive. You just wait.
Jeez.
Oh, gosh.
So let's talk about aliens and UFOs, or aliens and Bigfoot. Do they have to be? In other words, it's very limited, I think, the evidence that Bigfoot is actually an alien. Do you think? So, what are your theories there? Do you think they're a something they're putting here to graze on Earth? Do you think they're the pilots? They're the intelligence? I mean, I'd just love to hear you guys, both Mark and you, Ron.
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that I'm kind of going along with this idea that they're puppets of something else that show up for a way that has an impact. It's not that they're not impactful. Finding prints, I've seen people who've discovered prints. It means a lot to them. It motivates them in a certain way. It makes them ask questions, pursue different activities. Visual sightings have the same sort of effect, whether they're some sort of projection from an id. It's just something that affects a huge number of people who will go around outdoors, at night or during the day. They usually don't show up in your living room. But what was your question again?
Well, I'm curious on if there's an alien Bigfoot connection, how do you view it? How do you view, I'm not really even sure how to word this. How do you view the Bigfoot status? Is it a pet? Are they brought here to, roam Earth to be a gene pool? Are they here as an environmental study, a study creature just to study the environment?
Well,
I could come up with 100 reasons.
I mean, personally, because of the way I'm pursuing things, it would be none of those. I think they show up periodically when needed, and that they don't live here, reproduce here, any of that sort of stuff. That's the kind of where I'm standing right now.
So were you inferring that their purpose is to get us interested in mysteries?
I'd like that.
Okay.
Yeah. They're transformational. These encounters have been very spiritual for people, and they open doors for them.
Well, I've always believed we're here to learn. I mean, what other purpose would humans have on Earth?
But if it were, just a hairy creature, none of that would be true. From their point of view, they're not trying to do anything like that for us. You'd be hard pressed to say that.
Yeah.
But you
don't think. Go ahead, Dino.
I was just going to say, I think you use the term avatar in the book or in the film, and I think that kind of sums up that idea very well, that it's another intelligence projecting into some physical form that kind of exists on this earth, even if temporarily, before it goes away again. Is that pretty much your position, Ron and Mark?
It is, and I think scientists are getting closer to how that might be possible. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and somebody at CU, which is the big research university in relationship with NIST, has come up with something that's sort of similar to that, where, the thought right now is that the thing that's most common in the universe is dark matter. It's what is propelling the expansion of the universe. It's the positive force to gravity, which pulls everything together. That you can grab a piece of that or grab a piece of space-time and then create something with it, like a little piece of energy with it. And that's been documented. So I think, you could see that's the beginning of the capability of grabbing something like dark energy and transforming it into some sort of, through a technological manipulation beyond what we can do, to manifest these things in the way that they're occurring for us. I mean, including the Tic Tacs. And if you wanted to get our attention, these are the craft that people have photographed and people have documented, and that pilots talk about. If you want to get our attention, you show us something that we can't do, which is to move without momentum, just move from one place to another without any sound or means of propulsion. That seemed to get everybody's attention. That's why there's now a whole department devoted to the paranormal that Congress just set up based on UAPs, led to some extent by the people at Skinwalker Ranch, at least Travis. So there's a lot of research going on here and being funded, and it's becoming academically acceptable for the first time to start researching this stuff.
So what do you think, Mark? What's their purpose? Everything has a purpose.
Well, this is a little self-serving. So I write science fiction and fantasy, and I do a lot of YA, a lot of young adult fiction. I'm currently working on one where a Bigfoot type creature exists as a caretaker, and so I can go back. Let's say we go back 50,000 years. We're in the middle of an ice age, and the human race is really on the edge of the abyss because we're in the middle of an ice age. Are we going to be able to survive through this ice age? If there were an alien race interested in seeing how life develops on Earth, say 50,000 years ago, in the middle of this glacial epoch, would they manifest themselves directly to humans, or would they have a sort of prime directive a la Star Trek, which says they can't? But they would create a creature, or they would have creatures already that would be able to inhabit the planet and help humans survive, help all life survive. So, in a sense, I could see an alien Bigfoot connection in the idea of life in the universe trying to exist and flourish, and an alien culture saying, "Hey, life is on the cusp of survival in this glacial epoch on Earth. Let's send down some creatures to help all life go forward." And you could see this maybe after the Permian extinction 270 million years ago, or something like that.
But couldn't you say that about the giraffe, about the rhino, about the lion? I mean, are you in other words, all these creatures are obviously of some intelligent design. I don't personally probably don't believe that there wasn't some intelligence behind, all these strange millions and millions of animals we have here. How is Bigfoot different? Why would it be here different?
I'm positing an alien Bigfoot connection, that Bigfoot are a species created by aliens to come down to Earth to help Earth move forward, so that all life doesn't collapse completely like it did. 95% of all life is extinguished in the Permian extinction, for example, 270 million years ago. So I'm saying this is a possibility. I'm not saying it is the thing that's happening. I'm saying this is a possibility.
No, I like your theory, but I'm trying to understand it. You're saying they would maybe survive beyond what the other creatures would?
Well, let's say that this caretaker has abilities to create a Garden of Eden type event where creatures can survive, not only humans, but other creatures as well. And that by allowing these creatures to survive, the natural evolution, and let's go back, I will go back to the Permian extinction again, 270 million years. You let the 5% of creatures that did survive the Permian extinction, you have a Bigfoot, a creature that comes in and says, I'm going to help this small 5% flourish so that we can see what happens on this planet over the next 270 million years, for example. So that's what I'm saying, is that they're caretakers, they're gardeners, they're creatures whose sole purpose is to make life flourish, or to help life flourish, without getting so much in the way that they contaminate it.
That makes sense.
That's just one idea that I could see.
Right.
That's for ideas of how this alien Bigfoot connection could happen. That's one
Can I add to that?
I'm currently looking at.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
So I've ran into a number of sensitives who describe their Bigfoot experiences as exactly that. That there are these families of Bigfoot and they're kind of caretakers and they're watching over people. And sensitives are sensitive. They experience and see things or feel things that most people don't. And so it's in the ether. It's swimming around. By the way, I finally got what you said when you wanted to have something big show up for you. So you'd rather have a 8-foot Bigfoot show up in your bedroom rather than a little tiny gray, huh? I got it.
Yep.
Took me a while.
Yep. So something about little creepy creatures gonna give me more chills.
But if you think about an alien Bigfoot connection and Bigfoot as caretakers, then that would answer a lot of questions of why they're not around, why nobody's ever bagged one. If you've got an alien spacecraft with cloaking technology that's able to to shoot a Bigfoot down to the Earth for a short period of time and then pick them back up, then you would have this portal where the people whom you talked about their experience where they saw these orbs coming out, you could have something like that. And
right.
And we actually see this goes back to cherry picking data. We actually see what we want to see. So if the portal opened in front of me, I might want to see an orb. I might want to see a Bigfoot. I might want to see I'd love to have a great conversation with Julius Caesar about Gaul in 55 BC. I mean, something like that.
I always look at a Bigfoot as I always think, obviously it's a hominid like a human, but it lives very primitive, does not hurt its environment, lives 100% pure, no fire, no tools, no clothing, no pollution, lives in harmony with nature. So it's almost like an example to me of what an animal can do, can still be very intelligent and still live in nature.
From my point of view, it's kind of like a gray. It's if it's paranormal or some manifestation of some puppet or avatar of something else, it's kind of perfect. It's close enough to a human being, but it's got qualities that are kind of primitive that make it another way acceptable. And the whole category of like Dog Man and Goat Man and all these other cryptids, they all take on these quasi-human forms that are moderately acceptable. If it was something more like a creepy crawly, really ugly reptilian thing with big feet, that would probably play very differently in our current climate if people started seeing things like that. But in the fact that it's close enough to us that we might have ethical considerations about shooting one and all that, seems to be a perfect kind of thing for another intelligence to create for us to move us in a particular direction, to open up and get with the program, as it were. Did that dumbfound you all?
One of the things that might be interesting about a Bigfoot is
Eugene, your microphone's closed.
Yeah,
that's okay. I was just going to ask quickly something that interests me very much in the book, and because we were talking about different phenomena or the similarity between UFOs, and you even mentioned dogmen then, which is in the book as well, is there's this cross-phenomenological, physiological, and psychological effect that some of these have on witnesses or experiences that you guys coined the term for as sizzled. Could you tell us a little bit about what sizzled is and give us some experiences across a few of the different phenomena that you experienced those things affecting witnesses on?
Yeah, if people are familiar with the series on the Skinwalker Ranch, multiple times people occurred where their brain gets screwed up and they have to go to the hospital and they can't remember what's going on. Even Travis had it one time. So I think there's at least 5 or 6 accounts on that show alone, which would be called being sizzled. And then when Expedition Bigfoot, which is the other big show that's going around right now, they had the first investigator came in. He had a sizzled experience. One of the local investigators from Kansas tells the story how he got sizzled when nobody else was getting sizzled. They were out looking for Bigfoot. And his experience was not negative like the ones on Skinwalker Ranch seemed to be. His was a positive one. It cured his tendonitis. But everybody said that evening he was twitching like crazy in a way he had never twitched before. In the movie, the Bigfoot, no, the Alien Contact in the Rockies, my paranormal co-producer, investigator, sensitive, son-in-law, had an experience on the land where we opened the portal where he got sizzled, and he experienced extreme pain and dislocation, and he had to fight through it. And it came on like with a snap of a finger, and it disappeared like a snap of a finger. So Mario Woods, who was had the encounter out on the field, got sizzled. At some point, he lost consciousness, and he ended up like 20 miles away in his truck, and he had no idea. Had no idea when he got there. His partner, his hands were still frozen on the wheel. So it's a variety of ways of screwing with your brain. One of the more common ones is the loss of time and memory. And we had an incredible experience of that when we were looking for the Beast of Bray Road. We were at this site next to Bray Road. Bray Road the Beast is probably the best known dogman in the country as a cryptid. And this guy has a property, he has 3 sets of footprints of different sizes that he's captured. He's got images from his trail cam that are pretty striking. But when we went to that, and there was a Bigfoot guy, his name is Jay, took us to the property for an evening investigation. The first thing that happened was that we were crossing the field, and there was this place we call the sweet spot, and he put his laser on the sweet spot, a self-illuminating spot, in conjunction with the place we were going to do our investigation. When I asked him later, why did you do that? He had no recollection. But so after we toured the property, we decided to go have a meal in town. We had pizza, and we came back, and finally I said, let's drive to Bray Road. You can't get out on Bray Road because people have a fit. But so we drove down the road. I'm filming out the front window during the whole time. And when the boys saw, Jay and Lee saw the footage, they were blown away. They could hear themselves talking in the car about, what goes on the road, but had no recollection of it. Lee had no recollection of the whole experience. And so that's another kind of being sizzled. And I think, I don't know.
Ron, I was going to mention, I've never really heard the term sizzled. People say zapped. I've heard zapped. And of course, most people in the flesh and blood category blame it on infrasound.
Yeah, I know.
Yep. So what do you think about that? I mean, do you think they're using infrasound also, or do you think that's non-existent? Something else?
Well, kind of like the Havana syndrome. I think it's pretty clear they're doing something like that there, aren't they? No, that's not. It might be. I can't remember if they decided it was infrasound or if it was some pulsing radio wave frequency. I think that's the most common thing. So, what technology is being used? I don't know. But here's a way people could study it. They could go and look at the brains of people who have these experiences and see if there's an area of the brain that's been affected.
Yeah.
Because when they look at people that have the Havana syndrome, there's something they can notice that's common in their brains. So that could be a scientific study. Collect these people who have these memory losses associated with these paranormal phenomena and other things like I'm calling sizzled, and see if there's something going on in the brain that can be detected.
It's really interesting. So many millions of mysteries. So if anybody in the audience has any questions for these guys, put them in caps and put them in. I'm looking at a lot of cool comments.
I see some of your supporters are texting messages or whatever they are, Doug, in support of you.
I'm the whole world, Ron, done completely dumbfounds me. The whole world. Think
Isn't it
about just how mysterious the
it's
world
wonderful.
is we live in.
Yeah, what were you before you were you, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and where are we all going? And what's our purpose here? And I think about all my personal experiences. I've had many, and I think, why? What's the purpose? And then I keep hearing scientists talking about the fact we're living in a matrix of some sort. It's all holographic. It's a big video game, and that's interesting too. I don't
Simulation.
rule that out. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Ron.
Simulation, you mean?
Yeah, simulation.
Why not?
Could be.
Well, that relates to older spiritual traditions as well. Like the Matrix is our modern version of thinking that we're trapped inside some type of advanced AI simulation. But there were very old traditions going back through Neoplatonism and Gnosticism, which posited that this reality isn't the ultimate reality, that there's a higher truth above us. And perhaps some of these things that people experience, whether it's Bigfoot or UFOs or, again, Virgin Mary sightings or ghosts, might be something dropped down from that higher intelligence. That's certainly what, for example, Philip K. Dick, the famous sci-fi author of Blade Runner, who had his own experiences, he thought there was this entity which was dropping information in, including UFOs, including other things, to perhaps wake us up from the spell of being trapped in this not real reality. To take the red pill, perhaps, as Keanu Reeves does in The Matrix.
Yeah, or just have fun with us.
Maybe just messing with us.
Well, throughout history, there's lots of examples of that. I mean, Rene Descartes, Isaac Newton, they all received downloads. Muhammad received a download. Francis Assisi received downloads. And if you read The Dark Tower by Stephen King, the entire premise behind that book is that he's the author receiving a download of this book, this series. What I find fascinating in this whole cryptid realm, from Loch Ness to the New Jersey Devil to Goat Man, Dog Man, is that of all these creatures, the Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yeti, these are the ones that are the most human-like. These are the ones that possess not only human visuals, but they have human qualities, like innocence. And almost all of the qualities that they experience are virtuous. And so if you were going to have a creature that was going to be downloaded into your consciousness to tell you about yourself or reveal a better way of living, you would create a creature like Bigfoot with these virtues to help you.
What about missing people? What about good and evil? Do you think, let's talk about good and evil first. Do you think these things are benevolent and malevolent? What are your thoughts?
I don't have enough experience with talking with individuals that have had a Bigfoot experience to actually be able to say whether they are malevolent or good. But my take on this from some of the literature I've read is that they're basically good, that they are not out there to harm people or harm the environment. As you said earlier, they live in nature without sullying it. They may appear to be primitive, but
that's the only thing, Mark, we can all agree on.
Well, the Australian Aborigines were considered extremely primitive, and yet the English people that came to Australia couldn't live in the desert when the Aborigines could, because as primitive as they were in sync with nature. So maybe Bigfoot is just an extremely intelligent creature that's in sync with nature.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of always been just in the back of my head, just like as like an example of a very intelligent hominid that just completely. I mean, 100% lives in nature. But then again, I also think, well, what would be their purpose? I mean, what do they do to improve the environment? You hear about them pushing trees down all the time. Quite a common, I mean, I probably hear 7 stories per week about them pushing trees down.
Maybe we have a wrong idea of what it means to improve nature.
Yeah.
We're terraforming the planet now beyond anything that it looked like even 100 years ago, let alone 2,000 years ago. Maybe the idea of improving nature doesn't exist. Nature evolves naturally. You don't improve it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but every animal adds to the environment in some way. I mean, there's bees that, spread pollen and pollinate plants and fruit trees. And you have, trees that die and make the soil fertile, on and on. I mean, every creature does improve the environment. Probably everyone but man at this point.
And there's an interesting thing about you talk about bees. Bees were unknown in the New World until Europeans brought them here.
You mean honeybees?
Honeybees, yeah. They were unknown here, but they were well known in Europe. You had honey mead wine as an example in England in the 5th century. So did bringing bees to the New World actually improve the New World, or were bees just an invasive species that allowed plants that normally wouldn't be able to survive here survive?
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying that this is right or wrong. I'm saying that there's 2 sides to this issue about what it means to improve nature and what really is improving nature.
Well, I think every animal here has a purpose to do something. There's a piece of the chain. Every animal does.
Absolutely agree with that.
I mean, there's no doubt. And I always wonder, what's Bigfoot's purpose? It's here.
Do you have an idea about that?
You're asking me, or you're asking Dean?
Asking you, Ron. Yeah. Every question that can't be answered by anybody else goes to you.
That's my way of thinking.
Exactly.
Well, they're doing the heavy work for creating a zoo for which we will be the things that they watch.
Okay.
That's a good answer, Ron.
Well, the Native Americans always thought of them as watchers and, observers. It's very interesting. Super interesting. I'm looking at comments here. And
there's one comment here I wanted to just quickly address, and that's from Rhonda Williams. And she says, "Great show. Wish you had a call-in number because what I have to say would take too long to write." Well, we do have a call-in number of sorts. If you go to untoldradio.am.com and scroll down below the show icons, you can leave us a voice message.
Yep, and we can play it.
Do that, and if we like it, and I'm sure it'll be interesting, you're very likely to be played on the show.
Yeah, yep. Good answer. We should have told them that about 5 minutes ago, though. Anyhow.
Well, they still can.
Lucky us, right?
Yeah. So, where do you go from here? You've already done the Bigfoot Alien Connection film. Are you going to do more of those? Are you going to dig deeper into the topic? What's your plan?
I'm not done with it right now. I'd like to do a follow-up to the movie.
Okay.
Because in some ways, the movie is sort of naive compared to the understandings and the experiences I've had so far.
Gotcha.
I actually talked to through a channeler, an alien species, a blue avian, which was fascinating. I never thought I would have that experience, but I did. So I'd like to include things like that. I don't know quite what to think about it, but whatever that was coming through this woman seemed to know things that would be hard to know because they'd never met me, or the channeler certainly didn't know anything about me.
Yeah.
And what we were doing, and had ways of speaking about as if it knew what it was we were doing in terms of our efforts to bring forth what paranormal hotspots. I'd like to go to a few more with diverse paranormal phenomena going on. I'd like to go to the Bell Witch Cave, which is really intensely associated with ghostly phenomena, and see what happens if we go investigating there. I'm really quite interested to go to this place where there are sounds like Sierra sounds. By the way, you know who Ron Moorhead is, right?
Yes.
You know the Sierra sound?
Yep.
It's the most, probably next to the footprints, the most complete physical example of an acceptable example of what a Bigfoot, connected to a Bigfoot, which he claims are them talking, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, they're awful interesting. I wish we had other examples that were equally as interesting. I listened to one yesterday that had a lot of clicks and pops. Very strange. There's a lot of really cool math that we're learning about, with Bigfoot vocals. These dual and multiple tonal qualities. And there's things missing in Bigfoot recordings that are in human recordings. There's missing. So I think audio can teach us a lot. I think it's important evidence.
Yeah, Ron right now thinks that he missed the boat because he thought he didn't understand that what he thinks now is that they were trying to talk to him.
Yeah.
And the way he approached it was kind of an adversary beast in the woods as opposed to something more paraphysical trying to talk to him, communicate with him. And, that guy, I think his name was Scott Nelson, had analyzed it in every way possible. Says definitely a language.
Yeah.
Just quickly, so we have Ron Moorhead on Talking Weird this Saturday night on the Untold Radio AM network. So if people want to hear more about Ron talking about the Sierra sounds, tune in.
So ask him about that, would you?
10 p.m. Central. I will.
Yeah, that's kind of where he's at right now.
So my last question for both you guys. Well, one, people had asked whether you guys have ever had dreams of Bigfoot. That's kind of a yes or no question, I guess.
Well, I haven't.
No. Ron?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. I figured that'd be a short answer.
Have you?
No, I never have. Do you feel that the rock throwing, the screaming, the vocalization, what's the purpose? To communicate with us? To intimidate us? To what?
I think it's all a communication in some way. Yes. To get our attention.
Yeah.
There's something here to explore. What's going on? Get our attention that way.
It does. That I will tell you.
It works.
Have you guys had rocks thrown at you?
Out
in the field?
Alan has. And when we were in Arkansas, we had some interesting rock dropping experiences nearby that seemed to be impossible.
Interesting. Well, where's the best place to get in contact with you guys? Buy your movie, watch your movie, or book, get your book?
Well, Doug, you should tell us how we can get our book.
Well, you tell me.
You can go to Amazon and Google
Amazon, yep.
Yeah, or it's on Barnes and Noble too, I believe.
Yep.
Wherever you get your local books, you can go there for that.
Yeah.
The movie.
I really. And where's the best place to watch the documentary?
Well, if you don't mind commercials, I would say YouTube. Tubi's kind of in the same boat. It's based on commercials. It's on Pluto, same thing. If you want to skip that, you can go to Amazon Prime and download it for a small fee. But you won't have commercials, but I think you got to pay $1.99 to rent it, and I don't forget what it is to own it. So you can go to all those places, and it's abundantly available.
Yeah,
embarrassingly available.
So when do you think the next project's coming out?
Well, the Alien Contact in the Rockies is just come out in the last month, and it's on Voodoo. And then the Paranormal Highway is right now, since the company that's doing it is releasing it on DVD, if you can believe it, in this day and age first, and then it'll go to streaming platforms. I'm not quite sure what their plan is. When you're not the distributor, I don't control how how they release something. Strategies change too. More and more, I think people are, I don't know if in the business are looking to go to these places where you have to buy or rent for a fee, and you have it that's more profitable to do it first and get that money and then put it on an advertiser supported site like YouTube. So there's a strategy to the release system. So I'm stuck in that with my other stuff at the moment.
Dean, why don't you close this out?
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. And please check out UntouldRadioAM.com. This is obviously the flagship show of the network, but there's several other fantastic shows. We have a show actually almost every night of the week now, and there is more dropping in the very near future as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening. It was a great joy to have you, Mark and Ron, visit with us.
Yep.
And Doug, thank you so much for having me sit in Alex's seat tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Ron.
Good to chat with you again, Doug.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
I call you up in the middle of the night. Been bothered by dreams, ain't feeling alright. You give me comfort, say just give it some time. By the end of our talk, I'm feeling just fine. You and I will always know where we belong. This ain't no ordinary love we got going on. I'll pick you up in my 59 Ford. We head on down the road until we get bored. Just you and me and the sun and the wind. If the rain should start falling, we'll head on home again. Everybody else can see where we belong. Should be in doubt, and I pray they never can pull us apart, and I'll wait for the time when we'll be together every day. But I know if ever we'll be led astray, that I'll find my way back home to you again. If ever you should be in doubt,